Welcome. Today's post is The Yellow Brick Road Around the World. Published on June 27, 2023. When the camouflage of comms is torn away, what is there to see underneath? Here are the topics we'll be decoding today. You can always find this list in the description below. If you enjoy this video, please press the like button and subscribe for weekly full-length blog posts and shorter, more shareable videos. Let's begin. All of my posts are a mixture of highly confident solid comms and mere hypothesis. I'd love to only include the best, but all of what I do is a work in progress. Every decode confirmed 100 different ways began as a hypothesis, sometimes built from nothing more than one tenuous connection. I say that because among my most confident decodes is what has been going on with military powers all around the world for years now. The plan. For example, my decode of Joe Biden's gaffes and how they convey timetables is clear. September 26, 2020. Joe Biden, I got to the Senate 180 years ago. Plus 180 days equals March 25, 2021. March 25, 2021. Joe Biden, when I came to the U.S. Senate 120 years ago. March 25, 2021. Olympic torch begins its 121-day journey around Japan starting at the nuclear disaster site. Plus 120 days equals July 23, 2021. Japan Olympic torch passing event ends. July 22, 2021. Joe Biden, way back 150 years ago when I was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. July 23, 2021. Tokyo Olympics start. Japan is 16 hours ahead from the USA, so it was July 23 in Japan when Biden said it. Plus 150 days. December 19, 2021. Davos World Economic Forum, cornerstone of international relations, postponed due to COVID. Maxwell trial juror deliberations begin. August 8, 2021. Tokyo Olympics end. Plus 180 days equals February 4, 2022. February 4, 2022. China Olympics start. Study that closely if you are new, or read the intro page. Joe Biden made a gaffe that counted down to the next gaffe which counted down gaffe to gaffe, giving the exact number of days in the gaffe till the next one multiple times. Started with 180 and ended with 180. Even if he had only done it twice, it would still be inconceivable. The countdown technically ends December 19, COVID-19 calm, which is when the cornerstone of international relations got delayed due to COVID. What uncertainty! The day before Maxwell 4 juror deliberations began. That fits perfectly with what I've shown that COVID represented. Look closely, and you'll see the timetables were timed to begin and end with two different Olympic Games. Symbols of countries coming together. If you can view that above as coincidence, then you are the background people in Rick and Morty. As Rick begs for help multiple times in the episode using a song and dance, everyone ignores what is actually being said and assumes it's just a song and dance. Some people can willfully ignore most things without thought, but please give it some thought. These kinds of parody exist for a reason, because comms this obvious exist all around us and yet are ignored by the conditioned masses. Besides, my decodes are reinforced further with my decodes of coronavirus coordination. October 18, 2019. Bill Gates Global Coronavirus Simulation, Dark Winter. October 18, 2019. Wuhan Military World Games begins. Plus 30 days. November 17, 2019. Wuhan COVID first appears. Note those military games involve the cooperation of nearly 140 countries. For it to be timed to coronavirus simulation gives you a big clue that what's been going on is not what it appears on the surface. This was the entire military force of the world cooperating before Joe Biden to take control in various ways. Joe Biden was installed as part of an ongoing plan I've decoded in many posts/threads, but I'm not going to retread my prior decodes much more than this. It was important as a preface for the subject at hand. If I don't say that people who are new may not understand they are watching a movie, that what they see with Trump and Biden was planned out by the military years ago with their willing participation. Q highlighted the takeover of the Fed as a critical date. When did that happen? March 27, 2020, equals Q Fed takeover. +4 March 31, 2020, equals end of Trump's 15 days COVID plan. +4 April 4, 2020, equals Marine countdown ends. +4 April 8, 2020, equals military plus Musk Starlink. +4 April 12, 2020, equals Easter, Harvest Week begins. Q highlighted on Harvest a few times. What did that mean in context of COVID? Part of it involved controlling the money supply with the Fed. Funding those that cooperated with the plan and destroying the businesses of any that didn't. COVID was at its core a military war of attrition against the bottom lines of companies around the world. April 4th was the COVID/Fed countdown. What happened when it hit? What started? COVID was used as a vehicle to flip. Getting COVID was a sign of cooperation to get clean. April 5, 2020. Nadia 4-year-old tiger first known case of animal infected with COVID-19. A symbol of a predator. The stripes are symbolism of non-comms awareness, but critically they are controlled by people who are. To protect themselves from losing everything as future court dates loomed. Cleaning up this mess has been the long process we've seen the past few years now. When did that zoo close? March 16, 2020, zoo closed for COVID. March 16, 2020, SNL closed for COVID. March 16, 2020, open, Sesame Street, teeth brushing with Elmo, most disliked YouTube video list. Remember the comms were tied to 04 to 04. These ops are ongoing. $44 billion for Twitter. Trump arrest date April 4th. In Twitter's case it's a vehicle for declass and in Trump's case it's a narrative tool, among other uses, both are parts of the plan. What is represented with 04/04? 04/04 equals NATO. A symbol of an international military alliance. World military coordination. Now some of that was new decoding, but most of it was old. The global military coordination is critical context for so much of what we see right now. What are we seeing this week? Let's decode today. Hamish Harding. One of the biggest news stories going on right now involves a billionaire tycoon named Hamish Harding. Harding went on a trip to the Titanic aboard an OceanGate sub and is currently missing. I am confident this is a comm tied to Joe Biden. Biden from the start was meant to rise and fall and many of my decodes of him reflect this. Why did he use gaffes in time to global military ops? Because his downfall is a major part of the plan. There are many aspects of the fall that send comms, and Hamish Harding looks to be a comm tied to the coordination of both the rise and fall. I already went over quite a few comms tied to this. And what we see with Hamish Harding is the most important one yet. Comms are often solvable by finding starts. For example, when did Hamish Harding become famous? Not Titanic, but his One More Orbit mission in 2019. Juxtaposition. June 16, 2019, Harding One More Orbit Instagram begins. June 17, 2023, Harding final post sinking Titanic. High-low. Instagram accounts can be used to mark ops in progress. It's a template I recognized immediately. Look at the start. June 16, 2019, Hamish Harding first Instagram post. June 16, 2019, Biden dominates battlegrounds. June 17, 2019, Biden announces fundraising success 360K donors. Biden just rose to the top. At the same time Hamish Harding was literally at the top of the world in planes breaking records. His Instagram account was the topic of many articles about the sinking, so I recognized it was part of the comms that way. June 16, 2019, Hamish Harding first post, flying high. June 17, 2023, Harding final post sinking Titanic. You can surely understand starting at a record high then ending at a famous boat wreck exactly 4 years plus 1 day later on the queue. Or is it exactly 4 years due to a leap year? But none of that explains the symbol of Hamish Harding himself. There is a lot going on here to dissect. First of all, why is it sinking now? Notice the Instagram avatar father plus son flying plane. What just happened? June 20th, 2023. Hunter Biden pleads guilty. What does that name Hamish plus Harding mean? Hamish equals Amish symbolism. As in rejecting technology. This fits comms I've gone over of how Biden will be running without support teams online. Notice the number of posts. 404 equals error online. Also a 4/4 comm. Ending his posts exactly 4 years after the start with that number is no coincidence. Look also at the name of when he first became famous. One more orbit as in symbol of going in for just one term. Notice also the name of the outfit itself. Ocean Gate. Gate equals suffix added to scandals. Note it began in 2009, Biden's first year, and also notice the name of the ship Titan. Does that sound familiar in relation to Titanic? Titan was the setup to the sinking of Titanic. The plan sent in comms years before it. Titanic was used in these comms denoting a symbol sent to Bush about not bothering to run anyone in 2009, as it would be the Titanic in scope of failure. Hamish Harding, why is his last name Harding? Before Watergate, what was the biggest scandal ever tied to any US president? That would be the Harding scandal. So the name is meant to invoke the scandal plus lack of ability to handle it, no tech support. The scandal itself is practically identical to the one Biden faces with Ukraine and bribery. Unlike 2020, the monopoly media control is gone. Who runs Twitter now? Someone promoting transparency, which includes not hiding the scandals of the left or right. June 21, 2023. Stepson of billionaire on missing Titanic sub flirts with OnlyFans model as rescuers race to find vessel. He asks a girl online to sit on him. Symbol of Biden crushed online. This fits what I decoded of Biden having no online support. Also went to a Blink-182 concert. Most famous song had the art of being tied to a porn star giving an enema. Symbol of the most unpleasant and invasive of all investigations. Harding, William. This ties into the other major Hamish Harding symbolism. Turns out just a few years after Titanic, the second Fed chair was named William Harding. If you've read my Titanic posts, you know that the creating of the Fed was why they did it. This new info helps clarify things in relation to the Harding POTUS comm. August 10, 1914, Hamlin first Fed chair, Hamelin comm equals Pied Piper follow me. August 10, 1916, W. Harding second Fed chair. November 2, 1920, W. Harding elected POTUS. Notice Harding remained chairman during Harding's time as POTUS but not the entire tenure. Before his death he was famously popular. Harding had a sudden heart attack and afterwards tons of scandals got exposed about him. Notice the prior administration was Democrat. Put that all together, and it paints a picture on what happened and why. Blunt explanation. They installed the Federal Reserve Bank and the only problem at that point was getting everyone on board with the corruption. Harding was on board and that is why he was popular, and that is also why he had so many scandals that only appeared after death. Harding, POTUS, equals Harding, Fed. It was a symbol of the Republicans accepting the corruption. His death represented going in a radically different direction. What was Calvin Coolidge famous for? His legacy on the economy. Trump invoked Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan modeled himself after Calvin Coolidge. Calvin Coolidge gives us the remaining puzzle piece necessary to explain the point of what is going on now with Biden. After Coolidge left, he quickly died, and under Hoover, OWL symbol, the Great Depression hit, but none of that is on Coolidge. Coolidge represented a reset of power. The Harding/Harding corruption gone, but not just gone. Dragged out of the shadows and presented to all. Teddy Roosevelt is the one that installed that owl in front of the White House in 1902. Speaking of which. June 27, 2023, Titanic actor Lew Poulter dead. Given he was 94, it would be easy to assume this is natural causes, but given the timing it may be something meaningful. Heck, Betty White was 99 and that was a crystal clear calm I decoded, so we shouldn't disregard it just for the age. Anyway, he was famous for playing the Macy's co-owner and House of Representatives representative that died on the Titanic. Macy's is a calm I go over here as it ties to Teddy and Franklin Roosevelt, which is the origin of the Federal Reserve and takeover. Him dying may well be a message tied to an ending of artificial growth that builds up some companies to Goliath size using funding. We can trace back Harding to Roosevelt even further. June 28, 1902, Harding, Fed Chair, elected President of Birmingham. June 28, 1902, Panama Canal Funding Act. Panama Canal being the signature accomplishment of Teddy, and how did it get funded? Harding Tonya. When I first tried to decode Harding, my first thought was Tonya Harding as a symbol of scandal. A reader of mine mentioned the POTUS Harding scandal and the light bulb hit. I mention this for two reasons: one, it shows how great my readers are getting at this, and two, I realized this likely gave me the cipher to decode Tonya Harding. What did it mean when the Harding scandal dominated the media in the 90s? I looked again and realized the crux of the story is taking out Nancy. Does that name ring any bells for President? Nancy Reagan. And that gave me a breadcrumb because it made me ask a simple question. Did Ronald Reagan get out of politics at the same time? January 1994. Harding plot attacks Nancy. February 1994. Reagan final speech. March 1994. Harding accepts plea bargain. 1994 equals Reagan diagnosed with Alzheimer's. These are comms for what took the most popular Republican figure out of politics. What took Reagan out of politics? With these clues the answer is obvious. Iran-Contra. The Mueller-like special inquiry ended January 1994, the same month as Harding/Nancy. Reagan's declining health was cited as part of why it was handled the way it was. Thus the spectacle of Nancy/Harding was to give a symbol/marker for the situation. The spectacle likely had other utility that will require a much deeper dive. One possibility is once they realized they could pull another Watergate, they bartered a trade instead. The highly publicized court being messaging for terms and conditions. Harding was granted a stay on her case March 9, 1994, which is one day after Super Unknown album with Black Hole Sun came out. A song about bringing a black hole to wash away the rain. A symbol for something that would otherwise become public being sucked into a black hole. Notice the comms in the video of burning a cockroach and sex. Both sides use blackmail as I've decoded extensively, and so this may have been a symbol marking an agreement to drop everything. Highly speculative hypothesis. Harding was forced to be ejected from the world skating competition, and that may have been a symbol for banishment instead of arrest. If Ronald Reagan had stayed in politics, he would have been a kingmaker, as whomever he supported would have been the next Republican nominee. Able to get far more support broadly. Another interesting thought about Hamish Harding is that OceanGate might be a reference to the Epstein/Maxwell-Terramar scandal. The Biden family owned land on Water Island, which is the closest island to Epstein Island. I also noticed the choice of 9 to 11 for the launch of Harding's One More Orbit, which could be a 9/11 symbol. Specifically it's 911, so a symbol of a disaster in the making. A planned crash incoming. Just like Titan, 1898, Titanic, 1912. Not the only relevant point to that date either. July 9, 2019, Ross Perot dead. July 9, 2019, Hamish Harding mission director and crew pilot for the flight mission One More Orbit. Ross Perot equals Republican vote splitter. Not the only major comm going on right now likely tied to this either. Wyndham. A reader noticed this one. Countdown comms tied to the winning of the US Open. This is the first major event since the Gulf takeover. I checked a ton of US Opens before to make sure, and none of the spreads were even close. Notice the specific numbers too. The countdown hits 1 on the 17th player IEQ. Given the rigging in sports, what meaning was there in who won? Wyndham wins. Same name as the largest hotel franchise in the world. Given the comms I went over tying OceanGate to a Maxwell connection, that may give us a context for this countdown. Especially considering the new Saudi ownership of the PGA. Remember what Q connected to Saudi Arabia. How are strings attached? Hotels and kids. Notice also the name given to the Saudi outfit. Live Golf. Roman, control, numerals, but also live. Birth dates are often used as symbols. Wyndham equals hotel symbol. December 9, 1993, Wyndham Clark born. December 9, 1993, Simpsons, The Last Temptation of Homer. Episode focuses on Homer being tempted into an affair at a hotel. I don't think his name invokes this episode, mind you. I think that episode was a marker for something tied to hotel blackmail that he also invokes. I also noticed the day after Doom was released. December 9, 1993, Wyndham Clark born. December 9, 1993, Simpsons, The Last Temptation of Homer. December 10, 1993, Doom released. Once blamed for Columbine. This reminded of the choice of LIV as a symbol. Symbol of cooperating or. December 7, 1993, New York Long Island rail shooting. December 7, 1993, Donald Trump asserts he will reevaluate life due to the Long Island rail shooting. Remarries. December 10, 1993, Doom released, ID software. December 14, 1993, Aurora, Colorado for dead mass shooting. Live seems to be a symbol of going against this direction of doom where threats rule. People murdered or fleeing as ghosts when they run afoul of the powerful. Removing the brainwash system creating sleepers is core to what I see going on now. June 8, 1999, Marla Maples divorce. June 25, 1999, Trump's father dead. August 7, 2000, Trump's mother dead. February 2000, Jesse Ventura exits Reform Party. February 2000, Trump pulls out of Reform Party race, Perot's third-party vehicle. 2000 Trump's brother-in-law dead. Also the fact that Trump was the one to send comms during that timeframe is likely no coincidence. I covered Wyndham as a hotel comm. And of course, what industry is Trump most tied to? Why Clark plus Wyndham? Clark symbolism likely invokes the same thing Clark Kent and Clark Gable do. In Clark Gable's case his comms represented the shift away from silent pictures into sound. Gab plus able. Able to gab, able to speak. He was literally crowned king of Hollywood by the media and his magnum opus was a symbol of the transition. December 12, 1939, former king of Hollywood Douglas Elton Fairbanks death. +3. December 15, 1939, Gone with the Wind premiere with 3-day festival. Moreover the former king, who reigned over the silent era died the same week Gable was crowned. Gone with the Wind is still the biggest movie of all time if inflation is taken out of the numbers. The point I'm making is Clark as the actor is the secret identity of the face on the screen. The same is true of Clark Kent/Superman. Clark Kent as a symbol was invoking Clark Gable only he wasn't Gable because newspapers don't have audio. Clark Gable equals movie industry control. Clark Kent equals newspapers industry control. Clark Wyndham equals blackmail industry control. The point may have been to associate comics with newspapers as a way to convey comms. Only instead of daily/weekly newspapers it's monthly comics. Either way it works as a symbol of newspapers. The writer in relation to the spectacle on the sheet. Superman also has the symbol of alien. Representing someone with a foreign affiliation in the media industry. I go in depth in this post here. Lots of connections to politics over time. The media defines the heroes and villains. What must happen is not just about exposing, it's also about takeovers. Sulla. Musk uses the Roman Sulla populist takeover as a possible solution for Biden going from a terrible situation into the best years ever. Notice the sequence of tweets. Begins with history of Zeppelins crashing Hindenburg in relation to church, banks, and the Empire State Building. My decodes of Musk's role are tied to funding. The other time he invoked Sulla involved a Santa Claus list. Who gets funding? Who is naughty and gets punishment instead? Notice the sequence. Black hole erupting plus aliens. Hidden to be exposed. Any non-cooperating learn what dirt Santa has. Some are corrupt but cooperate and find redemption, others aren't and believe they can wait out any storm to come. Trump's hardships are a message for viewers of what's to come to their door. A justice gavel dropping slowly over years. Those underneath choose whether they want life insurance or roll the dice. I have sympathy as I've shown the horror for any that cross it, but there is no excuse for any to remain on sidelines now. The multitudes of plants that choose are variables, Biden is a constant. His movie is already written. His scandals will be exposed and unlike Obama's legendary social media backing, Biden will have nothing. He will feel the full brunt. Grab a thread from today and follow the columns backwards. For example, notice when Musk first made his offer to buy Twitter he invoked the Titanic as the repercussions of trying to stop the buyout. Take a look at the sequence of tweets. Musk talks to Al Walid in the following tweet about their ownership of Twitter stock. Reconcile the Twitter takeover to the Gulf takeover. In both cases the leadership fought against takeover. He also talked about free speech as that's what buying Twitter changed. Musk's approach is to open the dialogue and end the shadow banning/censorship. He fired the top leadership and then released internal documents and even the source code while also unbanning accounts. I'm only back on Twitter because of Musk. Despite never cursing and always being friendly, I was ejected from Twitter for no explained reasons. Violation of Twitter policy is all I got. Musk taking over Twitter was fought against because there are secrets in the world people need to stay secrets. Up until Musk took Twitter, the only place that could even be feasible to speak openly in groups was 8chan. A tiny corner of the internet, and even that was taken down and had long fights over ownership. All to maintain an environment of ignorance. The trajectory we are on now is away from ignorance, but we have only just started that journey. As my friend that runs the YouTube channel for my posts is fond of saying, the world isn't what it seems. But what exactly is it then? The answer can be found at the end of the road we are all on. Trying to lift the world out of darkness is easier with help, so I'm happy a few readers have shown initiative. One began this YouTube channel, another started creating graphics for posts. And I can't forget the spectacular help I get from my admins on Telegram. That's where to begin if you are curious about taking things to the next level. Our world is built with double talk. The ignorant see A, but the comms aware see A and B, but only B is true. In plain sight, yet none of it seen except by those who know how to look. All hidden from us from birth to death, and some of the world means to keep it that way. The world was designed to maintain this status quo of ignorance. A lie becomes routine, tradition even, and this is why the difficult part isn't in learning comms, but in unlearning our programming. To begin requires prefaces before discussion to ease people into it. The difficulty in bringing this stuff to the public has comms tied to it as well. The coordination is a plan leading to exposure, and there were comms explaining things every step. Ugly fast. Remember the World Military April 4th countdown? What happened on that date in 2019? April 4th, 2019, debut trailer of the infamous Ugly Sonic leading to mass backlash. It was designed to be ugly to send a message about the plan, that a delay before exposure was necessary lest they make an ugly Sonic. The backlash allowed open discussion of the plan. I partially deconstructed this in this post. At the time I thought it was representing Durham's investigation. I realize now that's just part of it. Note when Disney put Ugly Sonic into their film they made him an undercover FBI agent. The trailer with Ugly Sonic was shown for the second and final time April 30th, and after massive backlash 2 days later they promised to take more time and redesign him. Notice he meows like a cat, I'll come back to that. What kind of comms hit April 30th? Just like Ugly Sonic, another ugly character began to trend at the same time. A popular web series starring a mascot that much like Sonic you'd have to really try to make him more ugly. A game that invokes an investigation with messaging tied to famous child abuse and murder cases. Another intentionally bad choice for the trailer involved using Gangsta's Paradise. Like everything else unfitting they changed it. Knowing what the ugly Sonic symbol was allows us to deconstruct the original symbol used in Gangsta's Paradise. The song was made for the film Dangerous Minds, a movie with Michelle Pfeiffer acting as a teacher to kids at a high risk of becoming criminals. Notice the parody Amish Paradise, the most famous Weird Al song. 1996-1997, Dangerous Minds Show. February 22, 1997, sheep named Dolly Parton, clone from breast announced. February 22, 1997. Dolly Parton on SNL, cartoon about stalking Dolly Parton plus skit about not being ashamed to masturbate. I go over that more here with screenshots of the skits and much more details. The point was in the strategy on how they would handle online. Rather than giving Dangerous Minds a new tool to murder, an agreement was made to addict them to pornography. I go over this in the post linked, but now it's even more clear. Sex symbol. Michelle Marie Pfeiffer was a sex symbol. Pfeiffer equals Whistler. IO in my hands and a gleam in my eyes. I was going to translate this directly, but in looking up the official explanation I found an even bigger giveaway. Look at what comes up. Top results for the lyrics explicitly assert he's not talking about his gun with Mac 10, but his genitals. These are comms-aware people laughing about the comms. The direct meaning is talking about the problem of capable people with a tool as powerful as the internet. That they need to be neutralized, and pornography is the way to do it out of the gate. Yankovic sees the parody of Michelle Pfeiffer and begins acting out masturbation in his Dangerous Minds parody. The internet is decreed to be for pornography for those that would otherwise use it in ways that could be problematic. Setting up the routine at the dawn of mass adoption of the net. The movie she did right after Catwoman and just before Dangerous Minds. December 11, 1992, Michelle Marie Pfeiffer Love Field. December 10, 1992, Fatal Fury 2, Introduction of sex symbol My Shirani. A character whose fighting style is designed around distracting men with cleavage. Anyway, Love Field is about the aftermath of JFK's assassination. She has a one-night stand with a suspect leading to their arrest. Part of the point of pornography was getting trackers on deviants. This is why porn sites are free. You are the product. Notice the focus of after meeting the sex symbol they begin cigarette smoke. Addiction symbolism. The start of a routine. Having them meet a sex symbol Catwoman in Pfeiffer teach Dangerous Minds a calm on conditioning. I said I'd get back to cat as a symbol, and it's a calm I've often seen tied to computer users. So is penguin, which is literally the mascot for Linux. Batman Returns had a penguin with umbrella protection as the villain. Penguin equals Linux equals allows anonymity. Linux symbolism is tied to home improvement, which I decode here. September 17, 1991, Home Improvement debut, installing deadbolt security lock. September 17, 1991, Linux first released, new computer security. Notice the son played the Lion King. After Batman, Pfeiffer would co-star with the Joker in Wolf, where she neutralizes him after sex. June 15, 1994. Disney's The Lion King. June 17, 1994. Wolf, Jack Nicholson plus Pfeiffer. October 1, 1993. Disney's Aladdin VHS. October 1, 1993. Age of Innocence Pfeiffer Rich Countess Engagement. A reader of mine hypothesized cat as a symbol of an independent contractor. This is in contrast to a dog as a symbol of a leashed, controlled, asset. I can't confirm it, but this is a logical deduction based on symbolism that impressed me. Notice the redesign hit the same day another game film released. May 3, 2019, Detective Pikachu. May 3, 2019, Sonic the Hedgehog to be redesigned. This is particularly interesting as it was the primary thing contrasted when the trailer went up initially. This is speculation for now, but I suspect the symbolism of the Reynolds as Pikachu is in Reynolds' rap. As in tinfoil hat. This fits Reynolds' most famous role of Deadpool. A character more famous than any other for acting insane. He got the role because Deadpool was defined in the comics long before the film as looking like Reynolds. The comics invoked the actor as a way to define what Deadpool is. Thus what we know of Deadpool also applies to him. There's plenty more I could decode going on right now with these symbols, but I haven't finished solving it all. Like this new Sonic murder game. There's always a number of comms I can't quite get a beat on. November 19, 1990, WWF debut Undertaker beats Mario. November 20, 1990. Nintendo Midnight launches SNES. 1985 WWF debut, King Kong Bundy defeats Mario. 1985 Nintendo, Donkey Kong equals top game at time, launches NES plus Super Mario. That might be nothing, though it's worth mentioning King Kong Bundy was the villain for WrestleMania. His name is also said to be the origin for Al Bundy. I feel there's something here, but I haven't quite dug it out yet. Speaking of pro wrestling. Here's a comm I was able to solve. The symbolism of Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, a villain in WWF that had the gimmick of buying everything and everyone. When he purchased the WWF Championship in 1988 from Andre the Giant, it led to the most famous WWF match of all time. So, $1 Million Ted purchased the WWF belt 1988. What else happened that year? In 1988 Ted Turner purchased WCW and became the top competitor of WWF, surpassing them in ratings for years. So that's an obvious one. In fact it's also the official answer to how they use Ted, but I didn't know that before decoding it. Still, this gives us a clear symbol. It's also a lesson in comms as it's confirmed Ted DiBiase equals Ted Turner, but it's only said in passing. I can't find anything extensive. Probably because Ted bought the WCW months after the other Ted bought the WWF. The plot then was a message for things going on behind the scenes. Given Ted Turner created CNN as well as Captain Planet, who Al Gore is often associated, understanding a major symbol of him has a lot of potential for unlocking more of the comms world. Update: Yellow Brick Road. Farewell Yellow Brick Road is Elton John's final tour, which began in 2018 and is ending next month. What is a yellow brick road? What does it mean to say goodbye to it? Why is this relevant now? A yellow brick is gold. Thus, Farewell Yellow Bricks is asserting that some kind of money is about to be spent. Reconcile with the timetables. September 8, 2018. Farewell Yellow Brick Road Tour begins in Allentown. September 9, 2018. Al Walid's ex-wife marries another billionaire. Remember, Al Walid was a billionaire, but after a secret agreement with the government, he was dropped from the list of billionaires due to a lack of information. What happened to the money? I've decoded this in tons of posts. Remember the Savior of the World painting purchased by the government. The symbol was in helping the world and using the vast wealth to that end. This was funding massive amounts of ops for that purpose. A mysterious influence on social media, and that the room was filled with row after row of computers. Notice who went to the wedding. CBS's Gayle King and Oprah. September 9, 2018. CBS's Gayle King and Oprah attend wedding of billionaire to most the famous princess of Saudi Arabia. September 9, 2018. CBS CEO out after sexual allegations from a dozen women. I decoded at the time the bad management was out, and good people were coming in, but now I am able to decode specifics. The specific timetable of cash and processes. He was removed by 12 women moving against him. Who controls the hotels and blackmail? Remember my frequent decodes of corona infection as a method of flipping? September 9, 2018. Farewell Yellow Brick Road Tour starts the biggest tour ever by Sir Elton John. September 8, 2018. Monkeypox appears in UK first time in decades. Elton John equals UK. Prototype. This also likely solves the original version of Yellow Brick Road as a com. It was the biggest album of 1974. What was the biggest news story then? Nixon resigning due to scandal. How much does it cost to fund something like that? Goodbye Yellow Brick Road equals dollar spent. This money-spending campaign began in Allentown, a symbol for alien, as in funding agents into a foreign world. Ends in Stockholm next month, a symbol of people who were taken over accepting it. This tells us that the official money-spending campaign ends next month. This fits expectations as I've been decoding a lot of conclusion comms. Buying the PGA being a finale of sorts. It may even tie into the Russia/Wagner stuff going on now. The theory being Wager Group took billions from the CIA to stage a coup and cash ended up where? Remember the world's most expensive painting, Savior of the World, was purchased by Salman from a Russian tied to Putin. Speculative, but interesting. If the Salman billions stop flowing, it makes sense something like this would be done to keep it going. It can't go forever, but we aren't quite at world saved, are we? No, the good guys won, but we still have the heaviest lift in D-class/court and funding is critical. Update, Elephant Mario. Nintendo recently posted an interesting reveal that has turned into a far-reaching meme. Mario turning into an elephant. I go over elephant symbolism extensively here. Though even if you've never read it, you surely know it's the symbol of the Republican Party. Why would Nintendo invoke this? If you've read my posts, you may have an idea about it. The famous Mario pipes are a symbol of the internet. A number of their comms tie into internet traffic coordination. Friendlies that can help push some things up and others down. Splatoon/Spittoon. A symbol of spitting on someone. The top YouTube gamer and one of his most famous bits was in obsessing over this, and I realized the popular Nintendo franchise, Splatoon, which involves squid kids shooting their ink at each other, i.e. spitting on each other, is probably a symbol connected to the Mark bit about a spittoon. Specifically, the spittoon joke focuses on descriptions of someone as filthy and disgusting. A symbol for insulting, spitting on, someone. If my hypothesis is correct, it's a coordination marker for young comms-aware kids to coordinate spitting online. A basic job anyone can do and requires a lot of people. The perfect kind of job for a marker like this. There are others, but my point is, if I'm correct, then Nintendo has an ability to coordinate online love and online hate. With that in mind, take a look at the trailer closely. Trailer ends with Mario turning into an elephant and kicking a sleeping Goomba. Sleepy Joe Biden symbol. Using a Goomba to represent him as weak. Trump getting a boost online soon. This ties into Musk-op coordination. For the longest time the left had a domination online, it remains to this day, but what we are seeing now are likely comms tied to its end. There are plenty of good people that would love to fix the terrible things in the world, but as best I can tell up until recently they were kept in check by threats of many varieties. Anyway, the ops appear to have been dormant for some time. Video begins with Mario growing. Symbol of the internet ops being pumped. Water equals info and the pipes symbolize the internet. Water shooting out of internet pipes is a symbol of pushing information. Also comms of memes, or comms of whatever it was that long cat symbolized, potentially using message boards to push. This political to video game East/West coordination goes back a very long way. The origins of the tech market traced to Pong. I decoded in this post how they organized ping-pong diplomacy just before Pong exploded to get the populace hyped to buy. It demonstrates the US/China connection, but what about Japan? Sentai history, Power Rangers. What was Japan doing at the same time? April 3, 1971. Kamen Rider begins origin of all Sentai Power Ranger shows. April 6, 1971. Ping Pong diplomacy begins. You may not be familiar with Sentai shows, or if you do, it's probably from Power Rangers, but it's been consistently popular in Japan for over 50 years. Once I realized the first Sentai series was tied to Pong, which was the very first mass-market video game. The symbol of what every other Sentai series meant became obvious. Kamen Rider is a show where a man gets turned into part machine. Remember, this was before computers were a thing for consumers and just before the first video game was launched. How would you symbolize what was to come? People suddenly playing games all day long. Note the first 2 episodes of Kamen Rider are a joke about American comics. Spider-Man and Batman. Airing the same day USA team went to China to play ping pong. Thawing international relations, which allowed an influx of low-priced goods soon to be in arcades. Just to reinforce the connection, this is a documentary outlining the origin of Sentai series as Kamen Rider. Sentai has received new iterations every year for 50 years. A show defined by characters riding robots. I.e. video games/computers that evolved alongside Sentai. For example, one of the earliest Sentai shows was Denture Sentai Denjiman. February 2, 1980, Denture Sentai Denjiman. February 2, 1980, Galassien, first Namco global hit. Released to the wide market same day as Galassien, and the plot perfectly parallels it. Both plots involve an evil Vader army invading. This was the second Marvel co-production Sentai i.e. USA cooperation. Note it was the first transforming robot vehicle, which likely was made to symbolize the revolutionary color animated sprites in Galassien. So if that was the second Sentai series co-produced with the USA, what was the first? That would be Spider-Man, and this is the reason I began this dig into Sentai. Sentai are defined by piloting giant fighting robots, yet Spider-Man not Kamen Rider was the origin of that. The Japanese Spider-Man in 1978 made his debut with a giant fighting robot. This perplexing decision is a meme online and was intriguing enough that I knew I had to solve the comm. Despite how perplexing it looks, it was easy to solve. As usual, I looked at the timeline. May 17, 1978, Steve Jobs' daughter Lisa born. May 17, 1978, Spider-Man. Lisa+Jobs was the namesake of the Lisa computer. A very famous system in computer history. I go into her history tied to comms here. Not a specific release marker this time, but Spy Jobs Spiderman. Spy plus Jobs equals Mona Lisa. The symbol of Lisa is likely to invoke the Mona Lisa. 1978, Steve Jobs' daughter Lisa Brennan born. 1978, Apple Lisa project begins. 1987, Steve Jobs confesses publicly that a girl named Lisa is his estranged 9-year-old daughter. 1987, Simpsons premiere, Lisa, 8-year daughter of nuclear plant. The most prominent comm you'll see in countless articles is the investigation into her identity. It's therefore a symbol for an unknown identity. Spy op anonymity. This is why Jobs spent years pretending Lisa wasn't his daughter. All of it was comms about identity tied to his then top-of-the-line computers. Computers that could be used for an ever-growing unprecedented number of things, especially spy ops. The Simpsons shares the same symbolism. You can find countless articles theorizing its location over the last 33 years. It's a show about a father working at a nuclear power plant. Symbolism of secrecy is built into it. His job is literally in surveillance of others. If you have trouble wrapping your head around how pop culture fits into it, I can simplify. Everything popular became that way due to media pushing. This is why the most popular things are usually tied into whatever op was important when that piece of media became popular. This is why The Simpsons' origins are tied to Steve Jobs and the then new computer ops. His very name, Jobs, is to invoke the ops. Also relevant is the fact that he began his career at Atari. This was the origin of the mass-market home computer industry. What was big in tech before personal computers? November 30, 1982. Pole position Namco/Atari released USA. November 30, 1982. Michael Jackson Thriller. Pole position equals top-selling game 2 years. Thriller equals top-selling album 2 years, and still the top-selling album of all time. Same day. A video about the masses following Michael Jackson as zombies. He was the king of pop, the loudest voice in the world and used to coordinate the popularity of the biggest things. In fact, you may remember last week. What is the symbol of moonwalking? What exactly is he doing when he moonwalks and what could it possibly symbolize? Solving something like this often requires historical clues. For example, Moonwalker was a name long before Michael Jackson invoked it. And when I dug into that Moonwalker, the whole symbol became clear. November 17, 1970. Moonwalker lands on moon. The first ever date of moonwalking. November 17, 1970. Computer mouse patented. This answers everything. What does a mouse do in relation to a keyboard? It slides. What is a moonwalk in relation to any other dance? Moonwalk was originally called the backslide because that's what it is. The whole dance is literally just sliding on the floor like a computer mouse. This begs the question, why would he send comms about a computer mouse? Computer mice are common today, but when did they start? January 19, 1983. Apple first introduces mouse with Lisa system. March 25, 1983. Michael Jackson Moonwalker debut. May 2, 1983. Microsoft introduces first mouse. Right in the middle of the two biggest releasing their first mouse. Which means the symbol is for the push to adopt the new sliding way of interacting with computers. A foreign concept at the time. It also explains why he has only one glove on. You don't use a mouse with two hands. Notice the first time he wore the glove it was specifically for the moonwalk. Why would those two things be connected unless my decode is right? I didn't know it was the first time he did that, but the comms predicted it. It also explains oddities like why he turns into a robot in the Moonwalker game. Insane without the cipher, and logical with it. Notice the coordination was not just with Steve Jobs but also of Bill Gates. To understand how they all connect with foreign ops, consider MJ in Japan. He takes Bubbles the moonwalking monkey to Japan for his tour to meet the mayor. Monkey equals imitation. Bubble equals rapid economy escalation. Japan of the 80s was literally called the bubble economy. Because remember, while Atari may have published most of the big games like Pole Position, they were created in Japan. Notice the focus on exciting things and reconcile with it being timed to Thriller. The popularity of each being the top. But then Nintendo replaced Atari. This is something I've decoded before, but every week I dig deeper into it. I'm getting close to a complete answer on what happened. To fully understand, remember the origins of the video game industry were tied to Pong in the USA and Kamen Rider in Japan. April 3, 1971. Kamen Rider debut, Spider-Man. April 6, 1971. Ping Pong diplomacy starts. April 10, 1971. Ping Pong first foreign trip. April 10, 1971. Kamen Rider Episode 2, Batman. The follow-up to Kamen Rider was the first Sentai series. April 5, 1975, first Sentai Ranger series. April 4, 1975, Bill Gates plus Allen partnership begins Microsoft. These tech pushes weren't just about video games after all. Also notice it's another 04/04, so it may be invoking a military coordination behind the scenes with computers, which certainly fits the history of the internet growing from DARPA, just like Facebook. What did Microsoft do in Japan? June 16, 1983, Microsoft Japan announces MSX, Standardized Home Computer Architecture. June 14, 1983, Nintendo releases Mario Bros., first appearance of Mario's brother, Luigi. Partnership comes again. MSX equals top computer in Japan in the 80s. Major releases also have comms. Biggest game in Japan for multiple years in Japan was Dragon Quest. There's a famous Easter egg for the Microsoft MSX Dragon Quest in Japan involving a lewd picture of the princess. February 6, 1988, DQ2 main MSX, Mirror of RA. February 6, 1988, Michael Jackson, Man in the Mirror. Possibly the most famous recurring quest in Dragon Quest involves the Mirror of RA, which began in the second game by using it on the princess. A mirror that reveals the secrets of anyone. March 2, 1988, Apple's first tech company acquisition. March 2, 1988, Michael Jackson performs at the Grammys, Man in the Mirror. This is listed as the closing act of his tour, which began in Japan, a symbol of surveillance and judgment. The lewd MSX Dragon Quest pic was famous in Japan, and a popular indie game about the MSX nostalgia created references to it. This means this indie game was likely sending comms we can track. Keep in mind Dragon Quest was the most popular video game in Japan for multiple years in the 80s, and so Microsoft's computer had this curious version of that game with a lewd picture. Lewd for a kid's game anyway. That Easter egg was included in a game made to invoke MSX retro nostalgia. April 28, 2002, La Milana Retro MSX demo released. April 29, 2002, Spider-Man debut. I go into the modern Spider-Man spy comms here. Facebook began with DARPA. February 4, 2004, Lionel Messi first professional contract. February 4, 2004, Facebook founded. February 4, 2004, Government DARPA LifeLog project ends. June 28, 2004, Sony Spider-Man 2, most popular Spider-Man game of all time. June 29, 2004, Lionel Messi first game for Argentina. That Spider-Man 2 connection may seem tenuous as it's just a game, but I've long followed games and thought it was strange that for whatever reason that specific Spider-Man game would return to conversations. Often focused on how it introduced open-world gameplay that became a staple soon after, also the fact that webs could cling to buildings, and also the fact that unlike just about every other movie game it included full voice acting by the original movie cast. The point being its prominence in pop culture is a calm and likely tied to Facebook's rise. The Lionel Messi connection as well, and can further be confirmed by recognizing his popularity there. Anyway, the specific MSX game La Milana was meant to copy was called Maze of Gallus. April 18, 1987, Maze of Gallus released. April 18, 1987, AT&T electrical engineer mid-air skydiving rescue of 5th grade elementary teacher. ATT awards $10K. Phone lines are how computers communicated in '87. These ops involve surveillance that can't be made public, not the actions nor even the results most of the time. Elaborate symbols in stories are created to let the comms community know what happened. They are purposefully dramatic to sell news to the non-comms aware. When I read the story about the skydiving, I realized it was likely the same symbol invoked in Point Break. An undercover spying officer jumps out of a plane with no chute to chase a crook. July 12, 1991, Point Break. July 12, 1991, Konami, Castlevania 2, same genre/company as Gallus. Those last connections are far from confident, but there is meaning to speculating like that. It's a good habit to create a hypothesis and run with it. Eventually patterns will prove/disprove so long as you do it right. Just never be certain until you see enough patterns. If it doesn't pan out, go back to the last data point that was clear. Then find new threads to follow. Like the Michael Jackson Man in the Mirror, Calm. It's paired at the Grammys and the tour with a song about finding a girl that turns him on and makes him sick. That tells me these calms are likely tied to blackmail. Creating pickles, a phallic green plant, inside glass, surveillance, Herobrine fluid, which fits given we were talking about the Atari/Nintendo ops of the late 70s early 80s. Notice the lyrics of the song Man in the Mirror itself. Willow deeply scarred. February 6, 1988, DQ2 main MSX JPN mirror. February 6, 1988, Man in the Mirror Michael Jackson song. May 20, 1988, Willow. Throwing election equals death of a dream. That fits given the deal I decoded involved giving up certain blackmail ops in exchange for political support. Intentionally starting and then aborting it. June 23, 1960, birth control first sold. June 24, 1960, writer of Man in the Mirror born. Probably coincidence on this one. But what isn't coincidence are the more obvious symbols. April 1, 1967, The Littles book. April 2, 1967, Speed Racer debut. September 10, 1983, The Littles cartoon. September 15, 1984, -1985 pole position cartoon. The Littles equals tiny people who secretly live inside homes of others, surveillance. You remember the Dragon Quest, Mirror, comms. Well, Speed Racer's artist famously went on to be the artist behind Final Fantasy. Thus connecting the two as symbols for the same. Comms of driving fast. Remember the early Sentai shows like Kamen Rider focused on pro racing. A major reason I began digging into Sentai series is because after learning Kamen Rider was the origin of all of them, I noticed the writer of Karate Kid was named Kamen. Given my decodes of that film, this rang a few bells. And after Kamen, Mask, Rider, it was Spider-Man, with robots, and then the official Sentai shows that copied Kamen Rider and Spider-Man that dominated. April 5, 1975, first Sentai Ranger series. April 5, 1975, Satoshi Nakamoto Japan Bitcoin inventor birth, famously a fake identity, thus his birth date is surely a calm. April 4, 1975, Bill Gates plus Allen partnership begins Microsoft. How are modern ops paid under the table? I spelled Allen with two L's, one was lowercase, so it reads as alien, but of course that was the point. Alien is literally the legal word to define someone from another country. Pop culture aliens are used as comms for foreign infiltration. September 3, 1946. Operation Paperclip approved by Truman to bring Nazis secretly into the country. July 8, 1947, Roswell UFO, disc shape. September 18, 1947, CIA formed. SIG was the original name for CIA, which was founded 2 months after Roswell. Hence a cigar to represent them. The conspiracy push on top of real news gives any that reject the narrative lies an outlet. You either believe the narrative lies or you reject them and believe conspiracy lies promoted in alt media. Truth was never on the table to begin with. Win/win for the system. Ick. The Alex Jones and David Icks of the world attract people to them with partial truths. First quote I found of Ick: Hollywood brainwashes people, but in the same sentence he talks about lizard people. That's how you take all movements toward truth and turn it harmless. A friend asked me about Ick today and my response was that name, Ick, likely represented how he acts as a repellent. Same reason they associate QAnon with lizard people despite the only connection one they project. After I said it they dug into him. They found he became a major face of the Green Party in the UK. Why did they do that? 1989 they hit record highs 15%, eating into Liberal votes. They took on Hick as Speaker and in the next election lost so many votes they made themselves irrelevant. Ick, indeed. I actually decode the origins of lizard people here. The origins, as always, are symbolism comms. It begins 1934 January 29 with a story from the LA Times. Not a tabloid. Read the Post if you want to know why they would run a comm like that, but the quick answer is the Federal Reserve. And with that we have gone around the world multiple times, and you may have noticed how often my major digs keep coming back to the Federal Reserve. I don't intend for it to happen, it naturally happens as a result of the biggest news tying to the most important things. Turns out what digging reveals is the most important thing in the world to the world is money. Big surprise, eh? Till next time. Telegram chat. Join the Decoding Blog Telegram group. Begin decoding. Send leads. This has been The Yellow Brick Road Around the World.